While maintaining America's technological edge with China is critical, ultimately, the balance of power will not be determined by technology, but by diplomacy, alliances, and strategic choices. That's according to Joseph Nye. He is former Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, former Dean of the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, and currently he's a professor there at Harvard. Professor Nye, so nice to have you on the program. Welcome.
Well, nice to be with you.
So how is the relationship between the U.S. and China fundamentally different from the relationship the U.S. had with the Soviet Union?
Well, the big difference is that we're profoundly interdependent with China, both economically, we have $500 billion worth of trade, and ecologically. During the Cold War with the Soviet Union, nobody worried about climate change. And climate change can do great damage to the United States, and there's absolutely no way to fix it without working with the Chinese, who are the biggest emitter of CO2. I make a distinction in my new book, which is called Do Morals Matter, between power over other countries and power with other countries. There are issues like climate change where we can't solve it alone. And that's why you have to be able to accomplish your own goals to work with somebody else. So we're rivals with China on many things, but we have to cooperate with them on others or we won't get what we want.
You say it's a three-dimensional chess game that the U.S. is playing with China. That sounds awfully complicated.
Well, it is, but think of it this way. If you're going back to the real Cold War with the Soviets, there was one chessboard, and you sort of put your pawns and your castles and you're worried about your king and queen all in military terms. But when you think about the competition with China, there's another board that matters just as much, which is economic. There are more countries that have the majority of their trade with China than with the U.S. That wasn't true during the Cold War. And if you go to a third dimension, a third board of ecological transnational issues like pandemics or climate change, as I mentioned, you can't deal with this alone. There, the power structure is totally different from military or economic power. It's chaotic. So it's a different game. And the one thing to keep in mind is that if you play a two-dimensional strategy in a three-dimensional game, you're going to lose.
With respect to economics, then, you say that the rules governing economic relations will need to be changed. How so?
Well, I think there are some areas where we and China can continue to work on managing the trade we have through the organizations like the World Trade Organization and so forth. But there are other areas where we may want to set up groups of what you might call the democratic countries or the countries that are willing to hold to a higher standard, so that when you come to telecommunications or equipment that involves surveillance or things of that matter, we might want to have a special set of trade relations with those countries. They think of it as concentric circles. There'll be an outer circle where China is a member, but an inner circle where they're welcome to join if they can live up to the standards. But it's very unlikely they'll be able to.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about those working with those other democratic countries that you mentioned in a way that would ensure a level playing field for companies that are operating abroad.
Well, it will make a difference to a number of companies. For example, if you want to sell certain equipment or purchase certain equipment at a preferential rate from Japan or from Europe, you can do it. If you're trying to sell into the Chinese market, you'll find that there is a different rate, or it'll be a little bit more difficult. We're going through this now as the Biden administration debates the question of what semiconductor chips, for example, we'll sell to China, and will the European companies that are important in lithography, for example, and sell when they're dependent upon American patents. So we're already at the brink of this type of problem.
And Professor, I wonder how your concept of soft power applies to the U.S. relationship with China.
Well, both the US and China have been making major efforts to develop their soft power, which is the ability to get what you want through attraction rather than coercion or payment. This is why China is engaged in what you might call vaccine diplomacy. And similarly, why President Biden has said that we've offered more than a billion doses of vaccine to other countries. This is a competition for attractiveness, for soft power. And the Chinese take it seriously, and so should we.
So what mistakes do you think current government leaders in the U.S. might be making with respect to managing that relationship with China?
Well, to go back to that metaphor about the three chessboards, I think we're doing pretty well on the military board. And certainly John Kerry has been making major efforts on the third board related to climate change. But on the economic board, the Trump administration pulled us out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade agreement. And the politics of trade in the Congress right now, both Democrats and Republicans are skeptics. And so we're sort of playing with a hand tied behind our back on that second board.
All right. Well, Professor Nyes, thanks so much for being with us, and nice talking to you.
Nice to be back. Thanks.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.